Afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for making the time. We switched the rooms at the last minute, so if you're still here, you must be really excited about this session. So thank you for coming on a Thursday afternoon. My name is Abhishek Agarwal. I'm a principal program manager lead on the Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection team. I understand I'm probably among the last couple of sessions between you and an amazing party. So we'll try to keep it on time, and hopefully you'll find it an interesting session. The topic for today's session, of course, is Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection and best practices to help you defend your organizations from the latest phish attacks. But I have an alternate title for you, and this is really about helping you becoming heroes for your organization. And the reason I say this is best practices are not just best practices that I or my team proposes from Microsoft, but this has been built up by working with multiple customers, some of who might be in the audience, and essentially taking all those best practices and compiling them together, and I just get to have the honor of presenting that on their behalf. All right, so let's get started. So if you have attended any security talk this week, you would have heard about Microsoft Threat Protection. It's a suite that brings together all our best security products to secure your entire digital estate across identities, devices, applications, and of course, email and collaboration, which is where Office 365 Advanced Threat Protections Plan 1 and Plan 2 come to bear. It's, of course, built on top of our intelligent security graph, and we process trillions of signals every day to make sure we are able to detect things faster, better, and ahead of where the attackers are going. So when we talk about protecting Office 365 with advanced threat protection, this is what we actually mean. What is the attacker actually trying to do? They're trying to get access to your organization. Of course, phishing is the most prevalent vector out there. They're trying to make sure your users click on a link, give away their credentials, or maybe download a piece of attachment inside the organization. But that's one such vector. There are other identity attacks possible with things like password spray or password reuse. But once the attacker gets access to the credentials, then we are seeing new attack kill chains that operate entirely inside the cloud, inside Office 365. The attacker can use Teams to then further lateral or do reconnaissance inside your organization, or they can do further spray of phish mails inside the organization using email, and of course use SharePoint as a watering hole, or create a set of forwarding rules to exfiltrate data out of the organization. With Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, we are offering tools to you to, of course, be best at the pre-breach stage, block 99.9% of these attacks as they come in. But in case something gets in, give you the right tool so that you can be alerted and you can do the right investigation and remediation throughout this kill chain. Now, when I was at the booth all week, there was a lot of questions about, hey, what is ATP Plan 1 and Plan 2? So we thought we'll put this slide in. So this is essentially a Russian doll of the SKUs that is available to you when you go buy either Office ATP Plan 2 or one of the E5 suites. Exchange Online Protection is our base protection layer. If you're on an E3 SKU, that's what you get with the E3 by default. On top of that, you have ATP Plan 1 or P1, which provides you zero-day protection against malware, links, and business email compromise scenarios. And then on top of that, you get ATP Plan 2, which augments the pre-breach capabilities of P1 with ability to do alerting, advanced hunting, automated investigation and response, and also user simulation and training capabilities. So if you have questions about, hey, what is ATP? It is all of this, both pre-breach capabilities and post-breach capabilities that's available to you in your environments. If you had a chance to go to my colleague Jason and Grisha's session early in the afternoon, we presented some real hard data why we believe we are the leading vendor in this space when it comes to detecting email-based threats. And this is just a law of numbers. We process over 4.7 trillion mails just this year, in which we detonate about 20 billion of these attachments and links inside our detonation chambers. So just pause and think about that number. 20 billion times a link or an attachment was sent to a sandbox environment, a VM was spun up in the cloud, and we analyzed using advanced ML whether that was a malicious mail or a link or not. That's the scale at which we run. And powered by that scale, we are able to block 13 billion malicious mails in Office 365 this year alone, of which 1 billion of them being zero-day malicious links and malware as email threats. So really, that's the so when we look at our effectiveness, we are convinced that we are the leading vendor when it comes to just preventing zero-day attacks coming into your organization. And all of that effectiveness that we talk about, we deliver it throughout the stack for you. Of course, we block a whole bunch of mail at the edge and through AV hinges and hygiene filters. Then on top of that, we run the advanced ATP filtering stack, so we block the mails through that. We also provide you time-of-click protection, so if a user was to click a link anywhere, be it on an email client, be it inside Teams, be it inside Word, PowerPoint, Excel, be it even in the SharePoint online scenarios, we will block those links for you and for your users. Of course, we go ahead and zap mails if we detect something after the fact. We can go back into your inbox and remove those mails. It's automatically enabled for your environment today and runs at scale of the millions of mailboxes that we manage in Office 365 today. And of course, last but not least, if something was to get through, you can then do admin-based investigation and remediation capabilities as well. So that 20 billion detonation effectiveness is basically being spread out across these multiple layers where we are blocking and protecting your customers either in the pre-breach scenario or in the post-breach scenario. But when we go talk to some of the customers, one of the things we have been discovering is the actual effectiveness that we see in the service and what the perceived effectiveness for a specific tenant might be. There might be some differences. The difference can be up to 20% on average. So 20% of phishing mails we see get inboxed into a tenant's environment due to tenant-specific configurations. So we are detonating those links, we're detonating those attachments, our advanced ML is running, we're calling those mails as malicious, but because you have set up your environment in a certain way, either because of a user allow policy, an IP allow policy, those mails might get delivered into your inbox. Or we are seeing cases where customers have not turned on the latest capabilities that we have provided. Some of the features have been out there for 6 months, 1 year, but we find, even when we talk to customers on the booth, we are finding they are not aware that these features are available, and as the attackers are moving, you're not able to catch up by making sure you're secure. So one of the things we did was actually went back and said, why is the case? Why do we see this discrepancy between what we are seeing in the service side but what a specific customer's experience might be? And this comes down to, our analysis tells us this comes down to really having a good change management posture inside your organization. There are different reasons that trigger change in your organization and can cause this misconfiguration to come to bear. You might have migrated these rules, these IP allows or domain allows from a third-party system, or you went through a merger and acquisition and now you're in charge of somebody else's or some other infrastructure. I'm working with a customer right now. They have over 1,000 domains that they've allowed through the system from which they migrated. They have over 300 IPs, some of them /24, some of them /16. And that's just a huge space of the internet that they're just allowing mails through into their environment. And when we go tell them, hey, please remove them, they have no idea where these IPs and domains were added. Some of these have been in the system for over 10 years. And so now they are nervous as to, hey, how do I remove them? Or what should I do now? So that creates a vulnerability in the environment which we should help you tackle. The other scenarios we're seeing is, as the attacks are constantly evolving, and they are now putting pressure on whatever your previous mail flow policies was. In one example, there's a customer who migrated their business process from an on-prem system to a cloud-based SaaS service. In their on-prem world, they were whitelisting that on-prem business process app. They went ahead and whitelisted the same SaaS app, but guess what? The SaaS app is a shared IP infrastructure. The attacker was able to spoof that environment, get hold of a compromised account in that environment, and was able to send a malicious mail in. So even if we detected it, we were allowing it through as well. The third case, of course, is as attackers evolve, we are adding new controls into the system and helping you detect the maliciousness over, but you might not be made aware that those malicious things exist in your system. And last but not least, you might have new users who are coming into your environment that might not have gone sufficient training. We have seen cases where people have disabled their junk mail folder, or even when the ATP policy says, this is a malicious mail, they might still click through it. So how do you make sure they're kept aware of all the latest security posture that you want to deploy? So with that in mind, we put together this framework to help you manage the security posture when it comes to email security or Office 365 security. The first, of course, is doing continuous configuration assessment. so that you know what is the drift between what you have currently deployed and what our latest guidance is. Number two, giving you the tools so that you can quickly understand the impact of any change that you're about to deploy, so that you can assess the business impact of it and then decide that to roll it out accurately. Number three, make it super easy for you to deploy the latest controls that we are delivering, and also to make it easy for you to stay current with them and not go, not start drifting from it in a month or so. And of course, there will be cases where we will catch stuff which is important to your business. How do we make it easy for you to manage the FPs easily? So if you think about the pre-breach scenario about managing this change using these steps, we can get you to a posture where you can stay secure quickly. Now, in this session, I'll focus on the pre-breach portion of this management. Tomorrow at 10:15, my colleague Sumit will talk about the post-breach capabilities of ATP Plan 2 and what is the security, how do you use that from a process perspective. All right, so in the next 35 minutes, let's go deeper into each of these segments and show you what you can do with Office ATP for each of these segments with the tools you have today, and what's coming shortly in the future to help you manage the change for your environment more effectively. All right, so let's start with config assessment. We have a best practices guide that will be published very shortly. It will get into detail of every control that we have in Office 365 Exchange Online Protection and ATP. It will go live very shortly. What I've done is taken a summary of those best practices, and I'm going to share that in the next few slides. So there's three big segments that we want you to cover: policy coverage and strictness of those policies, review of your IP and domain allow policies across transport rules, IP allows and domain allows, and mailbox security settings. All right, so policy coverage. Of course, there's a whole bunch of policies that's available to you. You should enable safe attachments. You should enable safe links. But one of the things we are seeing is there are customers who are not enabling safe links for all their users. You might have enabled it 3 years in the past, 1 year in the past for a subset of the users. Please go back, take a look, and make sure it's enabled for everybody in your environment. There's a new capability we shipped recently where with ATP safe links, we can hold the mail while detonation is being processed for a link before it gets delivered. Take a look at that. Go ahead and turn that one on. Go enable business email compromise protection stack with user impersonation and domain impersonation. Even there's a new capability that's shipped 6 months ago that can now protect the entire organization using mailbox intelligence. Take a look at that, evaluate that, make sure that's enabled in your organization. And of course, there's a whole bunch of others. You'll have the slides available to you. You can review them. But there's two that I want you to walk away with today. Please enable quarantine for all your policies. If you have any policy today, whether it's spam, phish, or malware, which is not sending mails to quarantine, our best practice guidance is please go enable it. We are seeing cases where the end user has disabled their junk mail folder. So even if our filters are catching it, the mail might land in the inbox. That's not the experience we want. Or there are some end users, and you might know this as well, that are super curious. So they'll go and dig the bad mail out of the junk mail folder and start clicking on those. So to avoid that, the best way is turn on quarantine. That will have an immediate impact on what your customer security, what your end user security posture is. All right, IP and domain allows. They are bad. Let's start there. Specifically IP allows and specifically shared IP allows. Please try to get or reduce them as much as you can. If you have to do an allow, we have filter-specific allow policies available. If you need to whitelist a URL in safe links, you can do that. If user impersonation is causing some problems, you can go put in whitelist in those policies. But try to stay away from broad IP allows in the system. Shared IPs is a clear bad. We see people whitelisting some sending infrastructure. Their marketing team might be using it to send some marketing mails, and they whitelist all those IPs. Please don't do those things. You might have to do domain allows. There are business cases where you might need to put a domain. But if you do it, please enforce a domain authentication check on it. Again, the best practice guide that we'll talk will cover the exact steps of how you would do it. And there's one thing I could request you to do before you go to the party and after this session. Check your policies and see if you're allowing your own domains as a whitelist. This is one of the most common attack patterns we see is the attacker just spoofs your own domain back into you. Now, we have all these spoof intelligence protection, but that comes to a naught if you have allowed your own domains through. So please go remove that. If you have to follow the previous advice, do a domain auth check, or better still, leave it to us. We have spoof intelligence protecting your intra-org mail from spoof detection, and let it do its job. All right, mailbox security. So far we have talked about what you should do with your filters and how do you make sure you have turned the right things on and you have reduced your attack surface area. With mailbox security, there's a whole bunch of things you can do on the mailbox in the cloud with Office 365 to reduce the risk of them getting compromised. So one of the new features we released in the last 6 weeks is now on all of your mailboxes, you can now set up custom sending limits. So previously, by default, each mailbox could send out 10,000 mails. There's no human being who needs to send out 10,000 mails in an hour. Let's lower that limits down. And you can set up custom policies on the outbound side for your different business groups. If there's an automated system that needs to do that, you can give that an exception. But that will have a huge impact on an attacker trying to weaponize a mailbox once they have gotten access to it. Number two, how many of you use forwarding rules for legitimate business reasons in your organization? I see maybe 3 or 4 hands, maybe in a room full of 100. That's exactly the stats we see in service-wide. 95% of the tenants have less than one user having a forwarding rules. So there's no reason for it to leave it on by default. Again, if you can go back today or on Monday and talk with your team, turn off forwarding rules by default in your organization. 95% of your user base does not need it. But guess what? This is the most prevalent attack vector out there for attackers. When they get hold of a mailbox, they're forwarding mails out of your organizations. Legacy protocols. Please turn off SMTP, IMAP, POP3 access on your mailboxes. Now this setting is available per mailbox with the Exchange Online. Again, with modern devices, with Windows 10, with iOS, Android, there shouldn't be any app that requires you to directly access mail through IMAP POP3. The reason we are recommending this is because this is the preferred vector by attackers to actually do password spray on your organization. So if it's turned off, you're just killing off that entire vector for your organization. MFA, I'll not belabor the point. Every security session you have been, we probably started and talked about that. You should look into that. But there's a whole bunch of other settings to enable as well. Enable auditing. We see cases. It's very critical for your post-breach detection capabilities where something might happen in your organization, but you had not enabled auditing, so now you don't have the ability to do investigation response after the fact. Enable junk mail. If you have turned on quarantine, you don't need to do this, but we see cases where the end user can go and disable junk mail folder, so it beats the tenant-wide settings that you're putting in place. And how many of you are familiar with the report message add-in that we have? All right, so some people, but not all. So with Office 365, you have a report message button that you can install on the clients, Outlook, OVA, Outlook Mobile on iOS and Android, that your end users can use to report any suspicious mails back to you, or any potential FPs back to you as well. And then you can use that to drive your security processes as well. So please make sure that's installed. I know some of you might be using a third-party tool. We have ability to support that as well in the product. So make sure there is a process that is tied into your security and operations process. All right, so let me do a short walkthrough of some of these new features that I just talked about. All right, so let's start with the safe links policy. Now, if you're familiar with ATP, most of you would have already seen this policy a few times. Every year when we come to Ignite, we definitely start by demoing with this. But there's some new features that we have turned on in the last 3 months. So we always detonated links during mail flow with Office 365 ATP, but the new ability is to hold the mail's delivery when link scanning is in progress. so that you will not deliver the mail till we have a known verdict on that mail. So this is a new feature. Its performance characteristics will be very similar to the safe attachments features that's already running in your organization. So take a look at this, make sure that gets enabled in your organization. This is the mailbox intelligence feature that's part of the anti-phishing policy. So now what you see is you can enable mailbox intelligence-based impersonation protection for your entire organization. This is again something that shipped in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 months. And this gets rid of the 60 user constraints that some of you have complained about. You can just go in with one checkbox, enable it for your entire organization. And of course, we give you the options to roll it out slowly. So you can test it. You can then gradually graduate it as it becomes, once you're ready to move it to production. All right, so this is the outbound spam filter policy. This now has an update where you can configure sending limits for each mailbox. There are different sets of limits possible. You can set up hourly limits or daily limits. And you can also decide what you want to do when those restrictions are hit. Do you want to block the user completely? Do you want to block them temporarily? Or you just want to do it in audit mode, get alerted and then go investigate and take actions. Really useful feature. We worked with a customer recently, and they had great benefits. They were seeing some compromised user activity, and by deploying this, they were just able to shut it entirely down in their organization and kick the attacker off from their environment. All right, so the other feedback we have heard is all that is great, but remembering and doing all of this manually, one by one, gets complicated. So I'm happy to announce that the team is working on a best practice analyzer, or we also call it configuration analyzer. So this is a beta version of it that I'm demoing right now. It will take all those checklists that I just talked about and will scan it for you automatically. So currently, it'll come in PowerShell form. And we'll do all those checks for you and give you a very simple scorecard of what is on, what is not, and what is your drift. And from there, you can decide how you prioritize those set of changes for your organization. Yeah, clap, yeah, please. All right, so what I showed you was the PowerShell version of it. That's coming, I think, in the next 3 weeks, if I see Pavel in the audience. If not, 3 weeks. But of course, we'll make it more polished. We'll also put it into the product in the coming months so that you can do a full analysis. The checklist that I was running, you can run that inside your organization for your tenant and see what the drift is. One more feature that's coming, I did not demo it yet, is Zap to quarantine. So the current behavior of Zap was it would send messages if it discovered it after the fact to the junk mail folder. Now, as I discussed, sometimes the junk mail folder would be disabled, or your end user would still dig the bad mail out of it. Now we are giving you the ability to send, by default, Zap would start sending mails to quarantine. I'm happy to announce this feature is already rolling out this week, and we expect it to be rolled out worldwide by roughly end of November. So that will be a huge benefit for you where you are now not worried that something's sitting in the junk mail folder and now you have to go delete it from the inbox. Zap will already take care of it and send the mails to quarantine. Like that? Clap for that? No? Yeah, thank you. All right, so we talked so far about assessing your environment, what are the configurations, what's the drift. But the second part of it is fine, the tool will spit out some recommendations, but how do you deploy this and making sure that you have assessed the impact and made sure there's low impact in your organization so you can do it. So there are a couple of things we'll show you. I'll do a quick demo of this. So for reviewing IP and domain allows, as I mentioned, it will be hard for you to know which IPs are good or bad by default. So what you can do is set up an alert policy. And now we have an alerting capability available where we'll show you which messages are getting delivered where our verdict is malicious, but because of an allow policy, the mail is getting delivered. So you can set that alert. You can monitor which IPs are sending the bad stuff, and then use that to drive your allow policies down gradually. That's one capability that is there. In addition to that, a whole bunch of our policies come with automatic what-if analyzers pre-built. So if you're familiar with spoof intelligence and our impersonation insights, both of them come pre-built with a what-if analyzer. You can basically run these two filters in audit mode, see what it's going to catch, if there are FPs, tune them, add them in the respective whitelists, and essentially gradually graduate from there and deploy it into your organization. Same with safe attachments. It has a pre-built monitoring mode setup, so you can turn it on slowly without having to impact production right away. So let me switch over and show you how you can set up that alert I talked about very quickly. All right, so it's straightforward. If you're familiar with security and compliance alert policies, you can set up a alert policy. It's a custom alert policy that you can set up to basically filter on any email that was detected as phish on the way in, but was delivered to the inbox. So you can set that as the policy. You can set filters on which filters you want to select. I will say start with the URL reputation one, because those are typically the most dangerous ones. And once you've set up those alerts, you will get alerts firing for you anytime a mail gets inboxed because of an allow policy. So in this demo, what I've done is I've whitelisted gmail.com through my domain allows. It's actually a true scenario. We had a customer who had put gmail.com as a whitelist in their allow policy. So once you do that, then you can start getting these alerts, and you can click on View Message Explorer. It'll take you to Explorer and show you what are those messages that is flowing through. So you can quickly see, hey, it's coming through the sender is at Gmail, these are the Gmail IPs, and so now you can use this information to drive down, what are your sources of potential risk, and use this information to drive down those allow policies in your organization. Oh, wow. All right, so one more thing that's coming soon. This will be previewing early next year. So one of the challenges we have heard is, of course, I've showed you the config analyzer, I've showed you the insights, but how do you deploy these policies and how do you stay current? So what we are shipping is this notion of group policy templates. If you're familiar with group policy in the AD world, the idea is kind of similar. You can take a whole bunch of settings across the different individual policies we have, safe attachments, safe links, anti-spam, anti-malware, etc., and group them all together and define your security posture. So we'll ship with two defaults templates in the box. There will be a standard template, and there'll be a strict template. And the idea really is, with the strict template, we have ratcheted up the aggressiveness of the policies even further so that you can take a more aggressive stance into your policy. And the good thing about these are, we will manage these policy templates on your behalf. So anytime we ship a new control, we will get your permission ahead of time that we will automatically turn on those controls for whoever this group policy has been applied. So you can have the peace of mind that you have not only taken the right security posture that applies today, but in future, if there's any new enhancements coming, you're trusting Microsoft to automatically apply that for your organization. Now, I understand that might be best suited for if you're a large tenant, you might require some change management and approval process, etc. Those capabilities won't be in the initial version of the feature. But if you're a small customer, if you're a small setup, or if you are a partner who's managing a small environment for other customers, I'll highly recommend you that you check out this feature because it reduces the cost on you to continuously stay in sync. Of course, the existing policies will continue to be applicable, and if you need to do more customized policy management, then you can continue to use existing policies. All right. So far we talked about. Okay, so now you've done your configuration assessment. You've looked at your insights. Now you've deployed it, either through custom policies that you self-manage, or through some of these recommended group policies that we'll be shipping shortly. Now, the next thing you want to do is constantly assess, what is my security posture? How are these filters performing? How am I getting attacked? Who's attacking me? Who is the most targeted person in my organization? Is it one person? Is it an entire group of people that are getting targeted? And is there something still missing in my configuration? Like, what else is impacting my effectiveness? Now, I will acknowledge I've heard feedback from customers that, hey, this is an area of sometimes gets a little complicated with our product. And we are making a ton of investments in this space to make sure we make it super easy for you to be able to answer these questions easily using the tools you have, and then be able to drive the right improvements and, of course, the right optics for your management so that you can convince them that you have the right plan that you're executing on. So of course, we have rich set of reports. I'll show you some new reports that is rolling out right now. We have rich analytics capabilities built in, of course, with the capabilities of Threat Explorer. You can do analysis of who and how is getting attacked. We expose all the data through PowerShell and API, and I'm happy to announce that we are working on a Power BI integration. We'll ship a Power BI solution with our API for the data that you already have, so that we make it super easy for you to answer some of these questions in your environment. So let me show some of this stuff that is rolling out. All right, so let me start first with the threat protection status. This is the kind of the first report you would go into to understand what is the effectiveness of the filters we are getting. And of course, break it down by the different detection technologies that you're deployed. But of course, the common ask is, I want to understand how are my policies impacting me, right? Where are these mails going? Are they going to my junk mail folder, or are they going into my quarantine folder? So we are adding new pivots into the threat protection status reports. So you can now filter by and pivot by policy type. You can pivot by delivery status as well. In addition to that, we have also added the message override information. So if messages are getting overridden because of either an IP allow, a domain allow, a safe sender, all of those will start showing up over here. So now you can use that to say, okay, where are stuff leaking through into my environment. URL reports. So this was a big ask from a lot of customers. Hey, we have the safe links feature, but it's hard for me to understand, what clicks are being blocked by safe links in which apps. So I'm happy to share URL threat report is also now rolling out. It will give you a clear view of what links are being blocked, who is clicking on it, and of course, what apps are being used to click on those links, etc. So, and of course, we'll expose them through APIs for you as well. Compromised users. So happy to share, we're also adding a compromised user report. So if you have scenarios where customers are getting, if your end users are getting compromised, now you can build a trend line of who those users are. Is the same user getting compromised again and again? Is that a problem that you need to fix? So all of that data you can start using through threat reports. Of course, Threat Explorer gives you a lot more rich data, and it gives you an analytical canvas to understand what is the security posture in the environment. So what I've done over here is build a very simple query. I've filtered on what were the mails that were detected by malicious URL reputation system, and I've grouped the mails by sender domain. So it's giving me a very easy view of saying where is my organization getting attacked from. In this demo terrain, obviously we're seeing a lot of phish mails come through from gmail.com, but you can now use this tool to get a sense of what is the security posture, how am I getting attacked into my organization. But in addition to that, what we have done is, again, in partnership with one of our key customers, we've gone ahead and built this Power BI dashboard, where what we are doing is all the data that we have inside the product, we're exposing that through PowerShell and through APIs, which you can pull through across and then stitch together this Power BI dashboard to answer some more key questions. So let's take a look at what this is answering for me. So the first thing we have done is, of course, built a funnel view of as emails are coming in, what is the efficacy of the filters as mail is flowing through into my organization. And then what is the disposition of those mails inside my organization? Are they getting blocked on the edge? Is it landing in my quarantine folder? Is it in users' junk mail folder for each of the filters? So it gives you a sense of what threats are residing where in your organization. The next report we built is, of course, we took all these senders and classified and then grouped them by the different detection tech that is catching them. So you can understand who is sending what kind of attacks into your organization. Am I getting phish attacks from a particular part of the world or a particular domain? So you can decide your block strategies accordingly. The next part, and this is a very key ask we get from a lot of customers, is, hey, how do I know who is the most targeted individual in my organization? So what we're doing with this report is showing you, we'll make it, of course, you pull the data out of Office 365, and then join that with your identity data, possibly Azure Active Directory, and this gives you a view of who is the most targeted individual in your organization. Are the threats to that person getting all blocked? Or maybe there's some skips and allows, and that allows you to then focus and prioritize how you fix your configurations. But not just looking at who's getting attacked at an individual level, you can now cluster and group, again, using the group information from your identity system to say, is there a particular group that is getting targeted more? And you can do, of course, computation based on number of users in that group, and then use that to drive your strategies for deploying new policies or conducting any user awareness training scenarios for your organization. So this is something that we are working on. Of course, we'll welcome feedback on it. This is still in kind of preview. This is a top ask from a lot of customers, so we are happy that we are finally going to be able to address some of these asks that you have made of us. Applause for that. Okay, thank you. All right, so we walked through, of course, the new reports, URLs, compromise, pivots, the Power BI integration. The stuff I did not demo today is campaign views that gives an even deeper understanding of how attacks are coming into your organization. There's a session tomorrow at 9 a.m. I highly, highly recommend it. Please do check it out. Ross, Mihai, and Girish will be doing an awesome session tomorrow at 9 a.m. All right, so managing FPs. Now, of course, there will be cases where our filters will be overly aggressive. As you ratchet up your protection, things might get more aggressive, and things might get caught or blocked into quarantine. So really, the FP journey starts by using quarantine. If you have a good usage of quarantine in your organization and a good workflow around it, it will ease the process that you have deployed in your organization for managing quarantines. We have a new capability about admin submissions. I'll talk about it in a minute. And of course, as I mentioned in the initial slides, if you have to do an allow, you use targeted allow scenarios. So let's talk a little bit about updates that we are making in the quarantine space. This is an area we haven't updated for a while, so I'm really happy that we are investing a lot in making sure this is modernized and updated to meet new requirements. So the first update that we're making is we're shipping a new end user notification. It used to be for spam only. We are updating it to be used for notification for phish as well. Now we had, oh great, thank you. Now the challenge that we are seeing sometimes is we get feedback, hey, you classify a lot of things as phish, but sometimes it's not really phish. To deal with that, we are breaking quarantine into a high confidence phish folder and a regular confidence phish folder. The high confidence phish is truly bad stuff. Our filter has very high confidence that they are bad. Regular confidence stuff is stuff that we think is suspicious, but it's possible that some FPs might be hiding there. So what you can do with that separation is now build richer workflows with your end user quarantine flows. So once a notification comes for the user, they can, of course, click and see what those phish mails are. The good thing is they can only view the mails, but they cannot release it. To release it, we are coming up with a request release workflow, where once they request a release, the admin will get a notification to say, hey, you have pending requests for you to evaluate. And of course, you can go into quarantine and then evaluate it in more detail. In addition to that, we understand that sometimes these workflows might work. You need to configure it slightly differently for your execs, slightly differently for some different users. So we're coming up with a new quarantine policy. It will come with a new quarantine RBAC role as well. So you can limit who has access to the quarantine folder. And with the new quarantine policy, we will also allow you to set up quarantine tags. So you can define, create your own custom folder or tag, and route mails from based on certain policies to different quarantine folders, and then control who has access to it. So we are coming up with the first request release will be the first workflow that we will ship, but with custom policies for quarantine, you will be able to create your own workflows suited for your environment as well. And that will help manage your FP management and will simplify it down as well. Now the next feature, this is something that we shipped early in the year, is admin submissions. This is the ability for you to report something back to Microsoft from the Security and Compliance Center. And once it comes back to us, we will analyze it both through automation and through human review, and give you a verdict back if this was a miss that we have now caught up with, or if it's a false positive that we should fix our filters for. So before you do any typical allow in your own tenant, My guidance would be you use admin submissions to report messages back to us so that it allows us to tune the filters without you having to manage a whole list of allow policies in your environment. How many folks are familiar with admin submissions? All right, so I don't see a lot of hands. So if you have not checked it out, I'll highly encourage you go into the environment, take a look at it. It enables you, it eases the kind of questions you might have about, hey, why was this missed, or is this the right thing, etc. That automates all of that workflow for you. If you haven't seen, maybe we can take a minute to just demo that to you quickly. So this is what the admin submission portal looks like. You can access it from the submissions tab in Security and Compliance Center under Threat Management. And once you come into this view, you can, if there is a case where you think a mail is misclassified, you can hit New Submission, decide what you want a re-verification on. It could be an email, and you can either specify the network message ID or upload it as a file attachment, or you can get verdicts on a URL or an attachment. And once you upload it, you tell us what you think in your mind the verdict was, and once you submit it back to us, we will reanalyze it back, and after a few minutes, you can come and look at the status of the submissions. Once it's completed, we'll show you what we thought about those mails, and it will also do the analysis whether it was missed by a certain policy misconfiguration in your environment. So that is live in your tenant right now, and again, both for if you're wanting help on FNs or FPs, that's a tool that you should be using in your environment. So these best practices, as I mentioned, these are based on some real customer cases that we have worked on over the last year. In one case, we saw over 60% reduction in phishing cases that and their employees were reporting back to that organization just by turning on quarantine. In another case, as I mentioned, one customer used the outbound policy to set up higher throttle limits on sending policies, and with that, they were able to cut out all compromise issues in their organization. So depending on what your scenario is, what your current configuration policy is, these sort of best practices will help you get real tangible benefits. And as I mentioned, make sure it convert you to heroes for your organization. To wrap it up, of what we walked you through is a kind of a workflow so that you can follow for change management when it comes to managing your email security and your Office 365 security. And in addition to that, we understand that you might need assistance with doing this. So I'm happy to share as well that there's a new fast-track deployment assistance now available for Office 365 ATP and Microsoft Defender ATP that will help and walk you through making sure these best practices are deployed in your environment. So with that, about 2 minutes left. Let me wrap it up. Thank you again. If you have questions, I'm happy to stay back and take as many questions. But otherwise, thank you for your time and hope you have a great Ignite.